Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Torah Tuesday class. And now let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we could meet together and read your word and talk about it and to learn how to better follow you and guard your word. We pray these things in Yeshua's name. Amen. So we left off in Numbers 26. We read through verse 51, and we read about the whole chapter was pretty much about the second census. And as you see, I made a little chart here comparing the two censuses. Is that the right word? Censuses? Censi? Numbers 1:20 through 46 is the first census. That's at the beginning of their time in the wilderness. And what we read last week, Numbers 26, 5 through 51. So I just put the numbers down just to kind of compare them. And as you see, the overall numbers are very close. They only lost a couple thousand overall. But we have to account for the fact that every single person in this list, except for Joshua and Caleb, died. So that's 603, 548 people who at this point are gone, laid in the desert. Hopefully they buried them. So the numbers are very close. So these are the people, the new generation of Israelites. And you see the order: Reuben, Simeon, Gad, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, Dan, Asher, Naphtali. And why are they listed in it like this? Not so much the order, but I kind of gave you hints there. Grouped into threes. Age? Not necessarily, because Ephraim was the youngest, and he's up here, although Reuben and Simeon were the first.
I believe it was the way they were grouped around the tabernacle.
Winner,
Chicken
right.
dinner.
So Reuben, Simeon, and Gad, they're in the south. So I'll mark that on here. They're in the south. Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun were east. I think it's that way. East. Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, west. And then this one would be north. Although they're not necessarily in the order that they left, because Judah would have gone out first, followed by Reuben. Then the Levites would have gone out with, the tabernacle and all. And then Ephraim, and last would have been Dan. Now, the only difference I really found, other than the numbers, was that in the second list, Manasseh is actually listed before Ephraim. And I didn't know what that would signify, if anything, really. Other than maybe he just wanted to be first at something. I don't know. It could, well, the order's the same, except for they're switched. Oh, sown. Well, that would have to be an O, though. Sown. Oh, it is? Okay. Sowing, yeah. They were sown into the land. That's a good point. So, also in this list, as we read last week, they list a lot of the different clans of each father group. Whereas in the first one, it just listed, Reuben, so many in Reuben and whatnot. So I just find stuff like this kind of interesting. You see these numbers, and it is pretty. I did add them up, and they do add up to that. So I suppose I would assume these numbers are kind of rounded. You know, it would seem kind of, well, maybe it did happen where they just ended up on a 500, a 400. Who knows? You know, I don't know. But these are only the people 20 years and older who are military age, and so we're assuming what, like 2, maybe 3 million people overall. So that's a lot of people, a lot of folks. Right. More than the 600,000, yeah. But when you think about it, you just think about all these numbers, and all those people are gone. You know, at this point in time, except for 2. That's pretty amazing. So we know that the Levites are not in the census, and we're going to read about them in a moment here, although they do come up with a number for them. In verse 52, we read verse 52 through 65. Did you want to read? Yeah, chapter 26. Starting 52 to the end of the chapter.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, the land is to be divided to these as an inheritance according to the number of their names. To the large one you give a larger inheritance, and to the small one you give a smaller inheritance. Each shall be given its inheritance according to their registered numbers. But the land is divided by lot. They inherit according to the names of the tribes of their fathers. According to the lot, their inheritance is divided between the larger and the smaller. And these are the registered ones of the Levites according to their clan of Gershon, and the land of the Gershonites of Kehath, the clan of the Kehathanites of Merari, the clan of the Merarites. These are the clans of the Levites, the clan of the Libnites, the clan of the Hebronites, the clan of the Mahalites, the clan of the Mushites, the clan of the Korites. And the Kehath brought forth Amram. And the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Lewi, who was born to Lewi in Mitzrayim. And to Amram she bore Aharon and Moshe and his sister Miriam. And to Aharon were born Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And Nadab and Abihu died when they brought strange fire before Yahuwah. And their registered ones were 23,000, every male from a month old and above. For they were not registered among the other children of Yisrael, because there were no inheritance given to them among the children of Yisrael. These are the ones registered by Moshe and Eleazar the Kohen, who registered the sons of Yisrael in the desert plains of Moab and the Yarden of Yereo. But among these was not a man who of those registered by Moshe and Aharon the Kohen, when they registered the sons of Yisrael in the wilderness of Sinai. For Yahweh had said to them, they shall certainly die in the wilderness, and not a man was left of them, except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Yahushua, son of Nun.
Thank you. So they do list 23,000, and that's 1 month old and above, whereas these are 20 years old. One thing I wanted to point out here is I find this number 59,300 going to 22,200 pretty remarkable. That's a loss of 37,000 people. And pardon me? Well, there's theories as to why. Last week I mentioned if it had something to do maybe with because the guy who was speared by Phinehas was a Simeonite, and maybe the Simeonites were the main people involved in, the incident with the Baal of Peor. I don't know. I've read other things about Simeon that they were like kind of disgruntled, throughout the 40-year history, and a lot of them just packed up and left. I don't really know. It is prophesied that they are going to be scattered throughout Israel, and they were a tribe within Judah, and they just kind of like, I don't know. If you could say any tribe was lost, it was probably them. Simeon, yeah. He likes to hamstring oxen and do violent stuff. Although there was the one prophetess when Yeshua was born. She would always pray at the temple. I think her name was Anna. Yeah. And she was waiting for the salvation, and the Lord, Yahweh allowed her to see the Messiah. So, other than that, I think the only, maybe Ephraim, they lost about 8,000, but most of them were kind of around even, or they gain. And Judah by far is the largest tribe. They went from start to finish, first place. So when we look at the tribe of Levi, so I have another chart here. This is kind of a timeline thing. Levi had Gershom, Kohath, Merari, and Jochebed was his daughter. Kohath had Amram, and he marries Jochebed, who is his aunt. And then they have Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. Now, it says in there that when he had her, she was born in Mitzrayim. So I did a little computing here, kind of drew the line where Jacob goes to Egypt, and Joseph is 39 years old, and I estimated Levi to be 45, and they actually give ages for Levi, Kohath, and Amram. 130. They lived 137 years, 133 years, and 137 years. Well, they don't say exactly where they were born, so I just kind of placed them in there. And Moses here. But I just want to talk a little bit about the 430 years, because I think sometimes there's confusion, because when you read the scripture in Exodus 12:40, if you just read our English Bibles, it leaves out this parentheses in here where it says, "and the land of Canaan." So the whole verse is, "and the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years." So I think a lot of people will say, yeah, they were in Egypt 400 years. But even if you just do a little bit of math, you'll see that doesn't quite add up, really. So the way it's figured, from my understanding, is that it started when Abram went to Canaan. He was 75 years old. And then when he was 125 years later, he had Isaac. Isaac was 60 years old when he had Jacob and Esau. And Jacob was 130 years old when he went to Egypt. So that's 215 years. So 215 years in Egypt for the Israelites. And then you have to figure that Joseph lived another 71 years. And according to this graph, I figured between the death of Joseph and the birth of Moses is about 64 years. And I think I've heard you mention about 60 years before. So just the being in slavery itself couldn't have been more than 140 years. Maybe it happened right after Joseph died. I don't know. Or soon after. Did you have a comment?
So, since you're talking about this, I've said it before. I'll say it again. So, when you go back, like you in here in your chart, when you go back to the beginning of the 430 years, this is the promise that God made to Abraham.
Right.
That happened on a Passover.
Right.
Because it says that they came out of Egypt
The very same
the
day.
very same
Yep,
day.
Exactly.
So that means that the feast date was the bookmark, and the number of years were
Right.
between the two bookmarks. Yeah.
And we could also say Isaac was born at Passover. Because when he was visited, Abram, when he was 99, he said, this time next year at the appointed time. So they must have been at an appointed time at that point. And then a year later, they were at the Passover and Isaac was born. So it's all very fascinating. I also, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the 430 years in the future is when the temple was, wasn't that when it was dedicated? I'd have to look into that, but which also was, would that have been on a Passover or a Sukkot? Yeah, yeah, it's right around that time. I think I've read that somewhere. I'd have to look into that. So this number must have some significance for us. So from there, yeah, 721 would have been, I think it would have been a little bit longer. 721 from 900 something, or a little less, I don't know. Yeah. We've been in America 400, yeah. I was, I don't know if you ever seen that movie, you've probably seen it, the Charlton Heston one with the Ten Commandments. I always get a laugh when they're in there and they're, yeah, we've been in here for 400 years working. But it's not quite the case. But I think the general public, people just kind of assume like 400 years, that's the number, that they were slaves. And, not quite there, but they were slaves. So, yes, I say. Well, they would have started living in Goshen as soon as they moved there.
But,
Yeah.
They became slaves after the original Pharaoh died.
Yeah,
And-
probably after Joseph died.
Yeah, but also the Pharaoh died.
Yeah, after that Pharaoh, and he was probably older than Joseph to begin with, so I would assume.
Or is it a couple of pharaohs? Couple of pharaohs went by.
There could have been two or three. Well, the Pharaoh, when Moses went to Midian, there was a Pharaoh, and then he's told 40 years later, the people seeking you are all dead. So that Pharaoh was probably dead. And then there was a new Pharaoh in his place. And 2 or 3, that could have been several, yeah.
The pharaohs, the two consecutive pharaohs were nice to the Hebrews. Then
Well, the
third
Pharaoh
one-
with Joseph, yeah, he was nice. It's hard to tell, but I think probably while Joseph was alive, that things were okay, I would think. You never really know, but anybody else have it? So at the end of that, and he does say, not a one of them was left except Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, son of Nun. So those are the lone two survivors. So anybody going into the land at that time, other than these two, couldn't have been more than 60 years old. There was nobody older than that at that time. So these two guys were probably like the elder statesmen. Well, Joshua was actually the leader of the of everybody, but so that I'm sure they were revered and well honored as they should be. So yeah, I think yeah, Joshua and yeah, and Caleb was about. I think when in Joshua he says, "I'm 85 now, and as strong as when I was 45 when I went on the spy mission." So he was probably about 45. They were probably right around the same age. I would think in order even to qualify to be a spy, you'd probably have to be at least 40 years old, I would think. Because isn't 40, don't they say, is that the age of, trying to recall, 40 is like the age where you have enough wisdom or something like that, that you can, do these kind of things. There's 40 and then there's 50. They mark those years as where you gain. I think 40 was like the age where you gain wisdom. So why don't we go on and read about the daughters of Zelophehad. And is there anybody who wanted to read? Lisa? It's 1 through 11.
Chapter 27, 1 through 11. Then came the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, the son of Gilad, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the families of Manasseh, the son of Joseph. And these are the names of his daughters: Machlah, Noah, Hoglah, and Milcah, and Tirzah. And they stood before Moshe and before Eleazar the priest and before the princes and all the assembly by the door of the tabernacle of the assembly, saying, Our father died in the wilderness, and he was not in the company of them that gathered themselves together against Yahweh in the company of Korah, but died in his own sin and had no sons. Why should the name of our father be done away from among his family because he has no son? Give unto us, therefore, a possession among the brethren of our father. And Moshe brought their cause before Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke unto Moshe, saying, The daughters of Zelophehad speak right. You shall surely give them a possession of an inheritance among their father's brethren. And you shall cause the inheritance of their father to pass unto them. And you shall speak unto the children of Yasharel, saying, If a man die and have no son, then ye shall cause his inheritance to pass unto his daughter. And if he have no daughter, then ye shall give his inheritance unto his brethren. And if he have no brethren, then ye shall give his inheritance unto his father's brethren. And if his father have no brethren, then ye shall give his inheritance unto his kinsman that is next to him of his family, and he shall possess it. And it shall be unto the children of Yasharel a statute of judgment as Yahweh commanded Moshe.
Okay, thank you. So these four, or is it five? 1, 2, 3, 5. 5 daughters. They have a complaint, and they do the right thing. They don't just complain about it. Say, man, we should get some land. They, just bring their complaint to Moses and say, this is the situation. And Moses, as he usually does, he just makes a snap decision. No, he doesn't do that, does he? He never does that, does he? He does the right thing too. He always takes it before Yahuwah. And that's kind of interesting that he's learned how to do that, but people will say, they'll call this the law of Moses. But it's not really the law of Moses. He's not making laws, and really he's not making the judgment. The judgments he makes is what he hears from the Father. So he takes it before the Father, and the Father says, they're right. They deserve an inheritance because their father has no heir. And it really isn't a situation where, they, say they had a brother and they're just jealous of their brother because he gets land and they don't. Really, it's a situation where they want to carry on the name of their father. That's really the motive they have. It's not, for them to have land, so that the memory of their father doesn't die. So, what do you guys think about that? Right, yeah, the land hasn't even been divvied up yet, yeah. Any thoughts about that? Messias?
I know that Moshe talked to the Father face to face.
Right.
But since then, I don't know if anyone has talked to the Father face to face.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the procedure is now for such a thing,
Right. Yeah, it says he was the only one, really, and all other prophets are spoken to in dreams and visions. Good evening, Paul. But yeah, he definitely had a direct line to speak, and also this kind of shows that I think that our Father, he really wants to hear from us. If there's something bothering you or me or whatever, we have free. He's given us the right to come before him and lay out our complaint before him. Of course, do it in the right way, right? And did you have a comment, Kurt?
Yeah, to me, it's interesting because as I've gotten older, and I interact with friends, neighbors, folks in general, it hasn't changed much at all as far as the stress and the fear that especially ladies go through as far as having security.
Right.
And when that's been taken from them, or someone has passed or mishandled joint fortunes, and now they're looking at the fear factor of how am I going to provide for myself in my old age.
Right.
I think that the foundation was there for mercy and for provision in spite of things that happen in life. Now that doesn't seem to be there, and I talk to people that are getting older that don't have a clear path of how am I going to care for myself as I get older, and it's frightening. It's full on frightening. I think it was far more merciful thing that was done back then to provide for widows, orphans, or gals getting older that didn't have a feller that was tending to them.
Yeah, the dispossessed. So he's his judgment. Our Father's not a misogynist. First of all, a lot of people would like to put that on him. Say he's the God of the Old Testament who was cruel. He just wiped out people willy-nilly. But that's not really the case. Here, we're seeing an act of compassion on his part. He realizes that these women, and we're not really sure how old they were. They probably weren't that old. They're of marrying age, I'm sure. And if you read further in the story, at the end of Numbers, they all do get married, and there are some certain stipulations as to how they're, to do this. They have to marry within their own clan. They can't just marry anybody from another tribe, but there are certain stipulations. But it's still there so that they can carry on their father's legacy. It's also interesting that they say that, our father, he wasn't in the Korah thing, but he did die for his own sin. So he was somebody who, one of these 601,000 Messiahs. Did you have a question?
The thing about it is that, at the end of the day, back in those days, the land didn't get sold to anyone.
Right.
Even if you sell it, it will come back to you at the year of Jubilee or whatever. The land is going to go back to the original inheritance people, So that's the most important thing that, in today's society, land is sold and we don't really have inheritance, So that's a big difference to me.
Right. So at the Hovel, they would, the land would go back to the original owner. Did you have a comment?
It's only fair and right. I mean, you look at these, they're supposed to marry within their tribe, which is Manasseh, right? And so these other men from Manasseh, they've got an inheritance.
Yeah.
So they have to marry within the tribe. So if he marries her, so there's 5 girls. So the first 5 guys that marry those girls actually get a double portion.
Yep.
There's a bonus in it for those first 5.
So they had a double portion and then a double. Yeah. So this law, if you want to call it, is one of. There's another law that some people brought before Moses, or a complaint, so to speak, and then it was enacted into law. There was one other time that something like this happened. Does anybody know when that was? No. Paul? John? Well, it was when the first Pesach, when the people came before Moses and said, "Hey, we touched a dead body. We can't celebrate the Pesach. We really want to celebrate the Pesach." So that's when the law was enacted you could celebrate it on the 14th day of the second month. So I believe this is only one of the 2 times that somebody brought something before Moses and it was enacted into a law. Because we'll see later, it's in chapter 36 where there's a few other things. Isaiah was talking about the Jubilee when the land goes back to the original owner, and they talk a little bit about that. Mark?
I was also going to mention, it's not like Manasseh is hurting for land. I think he gets the biggest area of land of all the tribes. He not only has the piece that he has within the natural borders, but they're also, the half tribe ended up getting a really huge piece on the other side of the Jordan.
Yeah.
And if we look at let's see if the numbers of their
numbers were growing.
So what does Manasseh?
32,000 to 52.
Yeah, so he's developing into a big, and of course, the prophecy is that they would multiply into big numbers. So
yeah. So anybody else have any other comments? We can continue. And read about Yehoshua, verse 12 through 23. Any takers? Okay, I can read. Oh, Donnie, you want to read? Lisa's our designated reader. Just the end.
Verse 12. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, Get you up into this Mount Avarim, and see the land which I have given unto the children of Yasharel. And when you have seen it, you also shall be gathered unto your people, as Aharon your brother was gathered. For ye rebelled against my commandment in the desert of Sin, in the strife of the assembly, to sanctify me at the water before their eyes. That is the water of Meribah in Kadesh, in the wilderness of Sin. And Moshe spoke unto Yahweh, saying, Let Yahweh the Elohai of the Ruachath of all flesh set a man over the assembly, which may go out before them, and which may go in before them, and which may lead them out, and which may bring them in, that the assembly of Yahweh be not as sheep which have no shepherd. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, Take Yahusha, the son of Nun, a man in whom is the Ruach, and lay your hand upon him, and set him before Eleazar the priest, and before all the assembly, and give him a charge in their sight. And you shall put some of your honor upon him, that all the assembly of the children of Yasharel may be obedient. And he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall ask counsel for him after the judgment of Urim before Yahweh. At his word shall they go out, and at his word they shall come in, both he and all the children of Yasharel with him, even all the assembly. And Moshe did as Yahweh commanded him, and he took Yahusha and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the assembly, and he laid his hands upon him and gave him a charge as Yahweh commanded by the hand of Moshe.
Okay, thank you. So Joshua is going to succeed Moses, we know, and it's important that he does it before all the people so that they see that this is the man who is going to lead you into the land. Because as we know, Moses, he wanted to do it, but he lost that right when he sinned at the waters of Meribah, and so Moses himself actually seems like he says he speaks to Yahuwah and says, asks him to appoint somebody. So he picks Joshua, which is probably the most obvious choice, I think, at this point. Joshua was the right-hand man of Moses for probably the whole time they were in the wilderness. And he was one of the two faithful spies. And and he had the right name. Okay.
This portion's always meant a lot to me because 14 years ago, let's see, in 2007, this was the Torah portion that was being read on the Shabbat that I was appointed as leader of this congregation.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
777. Wow. Picked a good day, too. So that is the protocol, I believe, and Mark's talked about this quite a bit, where you can't just go out there and, appoint yourself, so to speak. And there's a lot of people who do, and we've seen a few of them, come in this fellowship a few times. But there is a definite protocol that we need to follow. And I believe for the most part, our fellowship, we do that. If somebody's raised up, you make a point of, laying hands on them and raising them up.
So we look at generals of army. Are they self-appointed? No.
Nope.
And if my memory serves me right, even the first president was not self-appointed.
No.
It was by the people.
Yeah.
The people appointed him out.
And he didn't even want to do it. Okay, I guess I'll do it. Even like the presidents, they have a outgoing, incoming ceremony where, the new president is. It would be interesting to see the old president lay his hands on him, though. Wouldn't that would be something to see? I don't think we see that, though, do we?
So Polly was actually talking to me about today because you have the whole ceremony of the queen being laid to rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch that, there was a protocol for everything. As a matter of fact, our president's wife got chastised for an inappropriate hat that she wore. It wasn't.
Oh.
It wasn't part of protocol.
Those
My
rude
point in
Americans.
my point in saying that is, if it's important to come before an earthly king with the right protocol, like the Magi did coming before Yahushua,
Right.
how important is it that we do the right protocol in approaching the real King of Kings? And this protocol that's being done here with Moses and Yahushua, this is very important, very, very, very important. And as you're hitting on, that the assembly should have people that are appointed by people that
Mm-hmm.
Abba has put in place already. So it's protocol is important. To sidestep it, it usually doesn't work out right.
Right. Did you have something, Kurt? No. You were looking at me. Okay. We could continue with offerings. Now, this is a pretty big section, 28 and 29. I actually wrote it out, all the different things that we do that through a daily sacrifice, Shabbat, monthly, all the feasts, Passover, Shavuot, trumpets, atonement, Feast of Booths, and there's a lot of sacrificing. We could go one by one.
Are all those on there moeds?
They all are, yes. The daily sacrifice is a moed.
It's a moed.
The 3 o'clock hour, third hour, 9 to 10. And then the 9th hour. So I wrote out each third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Between the here, there's no sacrificing except maybe like on a Shabbat when you had a lot of.
Yeah, I think on the Shabbat there was one extra one for noontime.
So, but I do find it interesting that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours.
Just coincidental.
7 feet. Yeah, it's just a coincidence.
So if that's a moed, and we know that the feast dates are moeds,
Yes.
and a moed it's an appointment. It's like a meeting. It's a scheduled meeting. So if the daily sacrifice is an appointment, is it important that we meet him with an offering?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I read through this, and you're probably like me. I read it, and it's just like, what did I read? So I wrote it out, and when I look at it, I see a lot of similarities. It kind of repeats itself a lot. So let me just read the daily offering. Yahuwah spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the people of Israel, say to them, my offering, my food, for my food offering, my pleasing aroma, you shall be careful to offer to me at its appointed time. And you shall say to them, this is the food offering that you shall offer to Yahuwah, 2 male lambs, a year old without blemish, day by day as a regular offering. The one lamb you shall offer in the morning, the other lamb you offer at twilight. Also 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering mixed with 1/4 of a hin of beaten oil. It is a regular burnt offering which was ordained at Mount Sinai for a pleasing aroma. The food offering to Yahuwah, its drink offering shall be 1/4 of a hin for each lamb. In the holy place you shall pour out a drink offering of strong drink to Yahuwah. The other lamb you shall offer at twilight, like the grain offering of the morning, and like its drink offering, you shall offer it as a food offering with a pleasing aroma to Yahuwah." So he's talking about in the morning, and we talk about this a lot, the 3rd hour, and then the evening, the 9th hour, 9 to 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So in this case, it's 2 male lambs, 1 year old, without blemish, and then 1/10 ephah of fine flour mixed with 1/4 hin of beaten oil. So an ephah is about 22 liters. So what's that, about 2 liters? And a hin is 4 quarts or so. Fourth of a hin, that'd be, what's that, a pint? I don't know. 1 quart? Yeah. So that's a pretty good heat, though. Yes.
That instruction, is that per household, per family, per person? Is there any?
That's a good question.
The top one, the daily sacrifice, is at the temple
Is the
for the whole
temple, yeah.
congregation.
Yeah.
My question to you is, and so these, other than the Pesach offering, all of this is at the Temple Mount, or
Right.
at the temple for the whole community. And some of them are like on Sukkot at 70 bulls.
Yes.
But my question is, I'm glad you laid it out like that, because I've wanted to do it, but I haven't. How many of those do you see the lamb in?
How many lambs?
No, how many of the appointed times, like in the daily offering, it's 2 male lambs.
Right.
How many others is a male lamb listed or required?
Every time.
All of those have
Yeah,
a male
like
lamb?
on the Sabbath, you have 2 male lambs. For the monthly, which is the new moon, 7 male lambs. The Passover, they don't list it in this passage. They just say refer to the
Uh-huh.
Unleavened bread. I mean, you have 7 male lambs, and I think it's just the first day from the way I read it. I could be wrong, but and then Shavuot, 7 male lambs. 7 male lambs, 7. And then for booths, you got 14 each day except the last day where you have 7. So there's a lot
the
of
only-
lambs.
So on Sukkot, the only one that's got male lambs is the 8th day.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Or the 7th day?
yeah, you're right. There's probably about 70 that goes from with
Oh,
the
no, wait a
bulls.
minute. Flip that back over.
14 male lambs
Okay, I see it.
each day,
So each day's got lambs.
except for the last day where you have 7.
So on the day that our Messiah was sacrificed,
Uh-huh.
that day there was a requirement for the top one here, for the daily, for the
Yeah.
daily offering. There's a requirement for 2 male lambs to be sacrificed at 9 a.m., 2 male lambs to be sacrificed at 3 p.m.
Right.
on the daily, aside from what was required that day for Pesach.
Right.
So you can see that the Messiah, that says, "Behold the Lamb of God that takes away," this is where you see the lamb being offered.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, on a Sabbath, like every one of these feasts, you still have to do this daily sacrifices. So that daily means daily, every day. So it's perpetual. So when you get up in the morning, when it hits 9 o'clock, we just, we're almost trained to say the Shema, right? Same at 3 o'clock. And then, when you miss it, I've done this before, and 10 o'clock rolls around, and I've been busy doing something, and it's like, I forgot to say the Shema, So maybe that's a good thing if you miss it, it's just something we kind of get in the habit of doing every day. So we don't have to offer a lamb in the morning with the flour and the oil. So the way I take it to mean is that you take a lamb with the flour and the oil all together, and that's a burnt offering. That's just the regular daily burnt offering. And then there's a drink offering where they pour it. I think they said in the, where did they say? In the holy place. That would be in, not the Holy of Holies, but just the, okay, yeah. So for the Sabbath, on the Sabbath day, 2 male lambs, a year old without blemish, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with oil, and its drink offering. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, besides the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. So on the Sabbath, you'd have your daily, each time, and then I guess somewhere in the middle you would do the 2 lambs for the Shabbat. So you're actually doing on a Sabbath 4 lambs. Well, one sacrifice is 2 lambs for the Shabbat. All right, does that make sense? No, this once again is, that would be just the temple. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. So I would assume the one for the Sabbath is like sometime in the middle of that. I don't know. Yes.
And I'm assuming the purpose of it was for an offering, but also was it for the priests to partake as food as well? Or was it
Well,
just...
these are called burnt offerings, and I believe a burnt offering is just totally consumed.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we go to the monthly, at the beginning of your months, you shall offer a burnt offering to Yahuwah, two bulls from the herd, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, a year old without blemish, also 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with oil for each bull, 2/10 of fine flour for a grain offering, mixed with oil for the 1 ram, and 1/10 of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering for every lamb, for a burnt offering with a pleasing aroma, a food offering to the Yahuwah. Their drink offering shall be 1/2 a hin of wine for a bull, 1/3 of a hin for a ram, 1/4 of a hin for a lamb. This is the burnt offering of each month throughout the months of the year. Also 1 male goat for a sin offering to Yahuwah. It shall be offered besides the regular burnt offering and its drink offering. So did I write the goat down here? I think I missed the goat. I got the goat here, but so now we're starting to have a goat for a sin offering, but so 2 bulls, 1 ram, 7 male lambs, 1 year old, and then 3/10 of an ephah of flour, 2/10 for the ram, 1/10 for each lamb. So it's getting to be more and more, right? So I was thinking, well, this is for the monthly, like the beginning of the new moon. So what if you had a new moon on a Sabbath? That would be a lot of sacrificing. Or didn't you say trumpets is going to be on a new moon? Okay. Oh, that's right, yeah. So for trumpets, that's a new moon. You would have a daily sacrifice, a monthly sacrifice, and a sacrifice for the trumpets. Yeah. It'd be a loaded day, a long day. I wonder how'd they get all this stuff done? It's just like, I was just like assembly line. There's what? Yeah. What did you say, Donnie?
I was just saying that it'd be nice to be able to do that because we wouldn't have all the distractions of what we're dealing with in the world today.
Yeah.
So I have a
Yes.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
I noticed, Mark, you said something about it's coming back again, these sacrifices. So, okay, if you could just elaborate on that, because if Yahusha is our sacrifice, then what would be the purpose of bringing? Because I know that there's a big deal about the red heifers that are also being prepared.
So he is our sacrifice, but he's the sacrifice for his sacrifice took away a certain thing, and the scriptures tell us it was death, okay, which no sacrifice, none of those could take away death. Those were for willful sin.
Mhm.
The other things that brought about, burning with fire, stoning, exile, all these things, you couldn't bring an offering. So he became an offering for that. So these are coming back. What if in the millennial, me and Donnie want to do a Nazirite vow? Well, if we do, there's a requirement for the Nazirite vow, just like Paul was doing. So remember, Yeshua has already died and resurrected, and Paul is going and he's doing a sacrifice at the Temple Mount for the completion of his Nazirite vow. So if he understood that, then he's out of protocol, because he's going and offering a sacrifice of 15 animals for him and the other 4 guys to finish their Nazirite vow after the death and resurrection of Yeshua. So obviously and this took me a long time to unravel this to my current understanding. I'm not saying I have it all right, but in my opinion, because Ezekiel 40 through 50 is clear this temple is going to be built and that Messiah is going to reign over it, and those sacrifices are going to be continuing. And the point is, there's other things that are sacrifices required that are going to be continuing on. So that's my way of kind of hinting at. So we've got an example of Paul doing it after the death and resurrection, which shows that there's nothing wrong with sacrifices, even though that Yeshua has died and became a sacrifice. And the Ezekiel 40 to 50 says it actually says there's sacrificial chambers within the temple. Yeah. So that was just a thing that was hard for me to wrap my head around because of what I grew up understanding. And and I still don't have it all right or understand it also.
Right.
I just have a couple of comments agreeing with Mark. I know that in these days we're programmed, for lack of better words, to think that sacrifices are bad. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Besides that, though, my one question is, like, this month we're supposed to blow the trumpet each night. I don't know if that's a commandment or a tradition. And when I go back, I was just thinking about what you said. Nobody is able to, or hasn't been able to talk Yahuwah face to face like Moshe. We're missing all the marks. You know what I mean? I just started myself in the last 5 years, or maybe 6, I don't know how long, doing this thing. You know what I mean? So how do we expect to communicate with Yahuwah if we're missing all the marks? And then how many percent of us are even trying to reach out to Mark? Got everyone doing Sunday worship, Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving. That's probably pissing off Yahuwah.
I would say so.
So, it's like crazy to me. Just thinking about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're not hitting the marks ourselves. For myself, I'm trying, but I'm just learning. Yeah.
And you've sacrificed lambs for your Pesach before, haven't you? Did you say you've done that the past couple of years?
Yeah, we've done the Pesach, and then we've done Sukkot also.
Oh, really?
A couple
Okay.
times. With Sam.
Yeah. Paul, did you have a
One of the things, and it's my understanding that the prophetic pictures in the sacrifices, the 7 feasts, the 7 days of creation, and then the 7 spirits of God all tie in. They're connected to a prophetic picture. So doing that 7th day of rest, or the millennial, it's still part of a prophetic picture, because that's not the end of everything. So when it comes to the sacrifices and what they represent, during that 1,000 years, we're still drawing near. We're still drawing near so that he can dwell with us. We're still doing this.
Mhm.
It's still part of the prophetic picture. So people are still being taught. So there are several things that are still taking place. Do I have a complete understanding of all of that? No, I don't. Still learning that. And we will probably be learning his ways throughout all eternity, and understanding how that is, that whole distinction of what that looks like.
Tie this into what you pointed out here, that there were 7 hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So if you look at the month we keep Passover and count that as 1, and go to Sukkot, that's 7.
Yeah, that's 7. Too.
So you look at 12 noon being the one on Shabbat, that's your Feast of Weeks. So you have the exact layout in the offering of the daily offering, exactly in the cycle that we're doing the feast and presenting offerings during the feast dates.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, this 7 it goes way beyond what we can understand.
You can even look at the 7 lamps, 7 lights of the menorah. All of these are significant.
Right. 7 churches.
Yeah, the 7 churches are tying into the 7 days. So it's all prophetic, and even what happens on each day of creation, and then how it connects to in Revelation in the prophetic picture. Because a lot of people look at Revelation as being something scary, but it's not. It's actually tied into creation. The end is from the beginning. So,
okay, thank you. Well, we're about out of time, but we can revisit this next week. But when you read about the Passover, it's just one line, and I think that's the one feast where we do have in our homes, and that would not be a temple sacrifice. But all these burnt offerings, they kind of repeat themselves through unleavened bread, Feast of Weeks, trumpets, and atonement, where you have 2 bulls, 1 ram, and 7 male lambs. And then the bull has 3/10 of an ephah of flour, the ram 2/10, and the lamb 1/10, and then 1 male goat for a sin offering. That starts up here, although I didn't write it down. So Shavuot, trumpets, and an atonement, and then Feast of Booths is a whole other animal. So that's where the 70 bulls, is that for the 70 nations? So if we counted it up, it would be 70. Okay, we could do that next week. So that's our class for this week. We'll revisit this next week and finish it up. I want to thank you all for being here, and thank everybody who's tuning in. So let's close in prayer. Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you that you show us through your word what you require of us, that we are to love righteousness and justice. And we thank you just for the examples we have through the nation of Israel in the past, and how to better serve you and to know what your will for our lives is. We thank you for all these things, and we pray this in the name of Yahushua. Amen. Thank you very much.